Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. The champions have been crowned, the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about what's going on in Indiana, a very unfortunate injury to Tyrese Haliburton. We'll talk all about that. Plus, some decisions have been made in terms of contracts and things like that around the NBA, some front office stuff, lots of stuff for us to get into as we are now just a couple of days away from the NBA draft. The trade market's heating up. So many different things going on around the league. So all of that is to say, make sure you subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube, as well as over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Joining me as always is Keith Smith. Keith, the finals, it's over. Game 7. No more basketball, unfortunately. That's the sad part. But the Thunder, a very worthy champion.
Yeah, without a doubt. I said it last night. They were the best team in the league from day one through game 7 of the finals. They get challenged a little bit in the playoffs. Denver pushed them to 7. Indiana pushed them to 7. But Oklahoma City came out of both of those with wins. We'll never know what would have happened if Tyrese Haliburton had not gotten hurt in the 7 minutes or so into the game. But it is what it is. I think the Thunder were probably going to win that game anyway. And here we are. Now, they're the champs, and everybody is. The question today is like, is this just what it's going to be for the next however many years or so? I think that's probably a little premature, but I think this team is set up for a long run of success and certainly a worthy champion.
Well, Keith, what's funny is we tend to do this game to game in a series. We tend to do this season to season too, where we look at what just happened and we assume that's what's going to continue to happen, right? Which is a little bit funny because when you take a step back, and what I'm talking about is when you're saying, like, are the Thunder just going to run this thing for the next, few years or whatever it is? Yes, they are very well set up. But when you take a step back and we don't think about what we just saw yesterday, you think about what we've seen over the last 7 years. We've seen a new champion every single year. So if history is truly going to repeat itself, it's not necessarily the Thunder winning the championship again. It would be another team coming in and winning it. Now, that said, the Thunder are very well set up and they may well win it. I just wouldn't jump to that conclusion. It seems like we're always eager to just proclaim that this team is going to run the table forever. And that doesn't seem to be the way the modern NBA is set up. Gone are the days of the Cavs and the Warriors seeing each other 4 straight years in the finals. The NBA is just set up very differently now. So I don't know where this is all going to lead, but obviously a big congratulations to the Thunder. I had people correcting me last night when I was saying this is the first championship for the Thunder, saying, well, but they used to be the Sonics.
Sure.
In my mind, that history got left in Seattle. The Sonics are going to be back in the NBA, I think, before we know it. And I'm looking at this is the first one for the Thunder, not a continuation of what they did when they were the Sonics.
So what I heard is breaking news. Trevor Lane admits Lakers Minneapolis titles don't count. So that's what I heard from that whole thing.
That's a very different situation. And that was part of the deal was with leaving the Sonics. Yes. They had to leave that legacy, that history behind.
The Thunder don't claim it. Yeah, they don't claim the Sonics title. They don't hang a banner for it. They don't have anything in their building. All that stuff is still in Seattle. I believe it's on display in a sports museum in Seattle right now. There, and it has been said that whenever it happens, Seattle gets a team again, that they will rehang all that stuff in their arena there, and they'll kind of like the Hornets did. They went away, then came back, and there's just a gap in their history as a franchise, and it is what it is with that. And I think that's where we'll see. Yes, the NBA officially recognizes that Sonics title is belonging to the Thunder as a continuous organization, but we are in a position where the Thunder don't claim it's. I'm 100% with you. Call it their first title. Let's all move on. And absolutely right. Congrats to them. And then I'll just touch on the whole idea of dynasties and all that stuff. 2 years ago, we were sitting here talking about, man, the Nuggets are set up to do this for the next few years. They haven't even gotten back to a finals. Last year was, well, the Celtics are running it back next year. They're going to bring everybody back. Why not them again a year later? Just things happen. The other teams get better. You get worse. Injuries happen. All kinds of things. Thunder are set up to run this thing out for as long as probably anybody since the Dynasty Warriors, who
Sure.
you could argue are still kind of hanging on to the tail end of that and trying to stretch it out a little longer if they can, but they're set up to run this out for multiple finals runs in a row. But history tells us it's probably not going to be how it happens. But I'm not going to rule it out either, just because they're really, really good. They have a million assets, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. They are in a very good spot. But I'll tell you what, Keith, it's unfortunate in general. Minor unfortunate for the Thunder, but big time unfortunate for the Pacers that this finals will now forever, especially that game 7, forever be remembered for Tyrese Haliburton's absolutely devastating injury, perhaps more so than the Thunder's title win there. Maybe not in Oklahoma City, but I know everywhere else around the NBA.
I think it'll be remembered side by side. It'll be the Thunder won and Haliburton tore his Achilles. I think that will always be forever. And I'm not putting an asterisk on this.
No,
I don't believe in that. I hate when people do it with the Lakers bubble championship. I think it's stupid. Every team was in the same boat. They all count. It's really hard to win a title. You don't apologize how you get there. But yeah, I'm with you, man. You're never going to think about this without that, unfortunately, that awful vision of Tyrese Haliburton on the floor pounding his fist, because he knew immediately what it was, and that's it.
That was absolutely brutal to see, especially when he came out and he hit the 3 threes so early, and we're like, okay, here we go, we're gonna get a battle. And then Haliburton, I mean, that was absolutely, and it was what struck me, Keith, and I already talked about this today on the radio, but you could tell it wasn't just physical pain that Haliburton was dealing with. It was the everything. Emotions of that moment of realizing that he's worked his whole life to get to that moment in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, and it was taken away just like that. Absolutely brutal to see. It's been confirmed, torn Achilles. And I mean, I almost feel bad like talking about what this means for the Pacers moving forward and all that, and do they want to pay the tax and everything, but and that's kind of the sports world that we live in. But that was a gut-wrenching moment. One of the worst ones that I think I've seen, in part because you could see the realization on the face of Haliburton, not just what the injury would mean for him, but what it meant in that moment.
When it happened, right?
Yeah,
Game 7. Every kid who's ever picked up a basketball has done, whether it's in the driveway or the gym or at the park, done the whole Game 7 NBA Finals, and you're hitting shots, and and it's you might do the
3, 2,
5,
1.
4, yeah. Oh, and if you miss, he got fouled, right? And it's you always have your reason why you get to still be the hero in your own thing, and he was living it out right there in the moment, hitting big shots, making big plays, and his team was either up or tied. It was right there. Obviously very, very early on in the game, and to see him go down like that is brutal. But we can recognize that. We can feel bad for him, feel bad for the Pacers, while also recognizing the NBA calendar doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. The NBA draft is roughly 2 days away now, literal hours, on the clock away.
Right.
We are
48 hours.
Yeah. 48 hours
just
away
about.
As we record this, in that range, 48, 50 hours. The Pacers have the draft to go through. Now, they did trade their pick this year to get their pick next year back, which looks like probably a semi-decent idea at least.
Right.
I'll pause there to say too, though, I've seen people be like, man, they're going to be a lottery team. No, they're not. They're still very, very deep. Good. They're not a title contender, I don't think, but they're going to be really good.
That's where it is, Keith, right? Because I've already seen that the Cavs are already, because the betting odds are already out. The Cavs right now have the best odds, betting wise, of coming out of the Eastern Conference. And I'm like, despite the fact that the Pacers were just in the finals, that's where it mattered, right? That makes sense. The Haliburton injury probably does knock them down a tier. Had that not happened, they're probably listed as the favorites to come out, especially if Haliburton stayed healthy and they won. They're the favorites, but without Haliburton, they're not expected to just fall out of the playoffs. But are they expected to now be the team to come out of the East again? No.
Yeah, that's it. It's Cavs, Knicks. I'm going to put the Magic up there now.
Sure.
I think those would be the top three teams as we record on June 23rd. There's still a whole lot of offseason to
Long way to
go.
go.
Who knows what teams do? I think this changes things big time for the Cavs and the Knicks, where now all of a sudden it's, whoa, hold on. Let's maybe just run it back. We don't need to make changes because with one, they're really close anyway. Like let's just run it back. If you're Giannis, this is probably further reason to say I'm good. I'm good right here in Milwaukee. What? Well, I'm not terrified if you put a decent team around me going into a series against Cleveland or New York or Orlando. Let's go. I think this gives the Pistons, the Hawks, all kinds of hope because Boston and Indiana and the Bucks, even if they do keep Giannis, probably not the same teams, right? That they were this year. They're probably all going to be lessened because they're all missing key guys. But your point where you brought up earlier is the Pacers do have real decisions to make. They don't have a ton. I have a lot of free agents, but Miles Turner, and I've seen some suggesting like you can't go into the tax now for Miles Turner. Again, that's crazy to me.
Sure,
You just pay him and you pay the tax and go and you figure it out, right? Because like you have to, you're not giving up on everybody else on that roster just because Haliburton went down. They're not so Haliburton centric that you should be like, well, we got to punt this season. I think you sign Turner, you let everybody else play, guys like Nemhard, Shepard, Jarris Walker. McConnell's a little bit different because he's an older player, but those younger guys, Matherin, they get to play a much bigger role now moving forward. And then when Haliburton comes back in a year, now you have all those guys with even more experience under their belts, and you have a really good team, and you just get back after it. And I think that's what the Pacers are going to do. I think they're going to keep Turner and to make a couple moves around the edges of the roster and just keep it rolling forward. There's no reason to get crazy about changing things and blowing this team up or anything like that.
If they do decide that, hey, we know we're going to take a little bit of a step back, maybe we're a playoff team, but we're not a true title contender. Could we see a scenario where maybe, we heard this around the trade deadline, they were searching for a home for Obi Toppin, see if they can maybe move on from him. Does that become more of a possibility? Do they say, hey, let's still keep our main pieces, but let's make not this summer, but next summer will be the year that we decide we're going to pay the tax? Could you see them going down that path?
Yeah, potentially, especially if your situation is like, we really got to find out what we have in Jarris Walker.
Yeah.
Then maybe you make a move like that, or maybe I'm not saying you move Neesmith because he's proven to be a really solid value, but maybe you move a guy like him, but smaller move. But I don't think it'd be Siakam or any of those other guys because your idea, it's the same kind of thing I've been saying with the Celtics. Just the Pacers' salary is going up while the Celtics are hopefully bringing theirs down, is you're in a position where you don't want to be not good when your guy gets back. Right. Because then it's like, then that guy's going to look around and be like, well, what are we doing here? Like, I worked hard to get back, and a year later, like, we're a lottery team. So, you could maybe a move like that. If they're really convinced, like, you really don't want to lock into a big extension for Benedict Matherin, maybe you move him in a trade or something to go, because, and that's, again, part of the value of this team has really good depth, especially at the guard, wing, and forward spots. Like, they've got all kinds of guys who can really play. So I would still say, as we know right now, the Pacers can still be a top 4, 5, 6 team in the East next year. There's no reason why they can't be. I think they've got more than enough to be that good.
Now, maybe it makes them a landing spot for some of the guards out there on the market. They look to beef that up a little bit with Haliburton out. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they could still absolutely be in the mix in the Eastern Conference. I just think they are now a tier below some of the other teams, whereas we would have projected that, okay, the Pacers, they're right there. They could come out of the East again. I think without Haliburton, they do take a bit of a step back. But again, all this comes down to what a horrible situation. Maybe something for us to look into at a later date is Haliburton, Tatum, Lillard. I mean, we go all the way back to
Pacers.
2 other Pacers. I mean, James Wiseman, like what?
Isaiah Jackson. Yeah,
Isaiah Jackson. What is going on? Why is this just bad luck this season? Is this the way the game is being played? The amount of ground players have to travel during a game, amount of quick stop start, the lateral movements, all of that. Is it that what why is this suddenly happening seemingly
Yeah,
at a much higher rate than what we've seen in the past?
we're not going to spend a ton of time on it today
No,
because we're doing a little bit of a shorter show today, and we've got other stuff to get into. But I think it's also one of the key markers with an Achilles injury is overuse, and basketball players play literally hundreds, if not thousands, of games before they get to the NBA
mm-hmm.
because these kids, from the time they're 6, 7 years old, are playing 4 to 8 games in a weekend in these AAU tournaments.
And
And it's
every
that
team
way.
wants them because they're the
Yeah.
best player on
Yep.
every team. So they're always, hey, come play for my team. Come do this.
Play
Come do
here,
that.
play there.
Yep.
It's also been sold as this is how you get a college scholarship. You have to be here. You have to do this. It's the same thing in soccer. It's the same thing in baseball, same thing in softball. These kids are all playing way too much. We sport specialize by the time these kids are like 10. Because if you don't, you're going to fall behind in your sport. And if you study any of it, Baxter Holmes did a really good piece on it a couple of years back at ESPN.com. But if you really get into it with doctors, they'll tell you like sports specialization is the worst because you're not training other muscles and you're overusing certain muscles, same repetitive movements and all those things. So we'll get into it at a much deeper level. It's like an August type topic for us to get into. But yeah, I mean, this is just, I fear we're going to see more of this. Like we're seeing more of the same injuries pop up in baseball, in football, in soccer, not necessarily Achilles, but like it used to be like, oh man, that was weird. That's the one random injury of that type forever. Now it's like, man, we're like this run on Achilles or elbow injuries in baseball.
For the Magic, it's the obliques.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
what are they doing in Orlando?
Yeah. It's just that's a big part of it. But yeah, we can spend much more time on that later. Maybe we'll get somebody to come on the show and talk about it with us in August when we're kind of in the dead period for NBA news. But yeah, we can all agree this sucks for Tyrese Haliburton, sucks for the Pacers. All that said, let's not lose sight. What an incredible run. What joy they gave us too as basketball fans over the last few months with all the ridiculous finishes and just what a fun style of basketball they've played throughout this playoff run. Hats off to Indiana. Really, incredible season for them.
100%. Some of the most insane comebacks we have ever seen from the Indiana Pacers. All right, let's jump over to the Nuggets. Hiring a front up. What are the Denver Nuggets up to here?
Well, they hired Ben Tenzer as their GM. Now, not a huge shock there. Ben Tenzer had been their interim GM since they fired Calvin Booth at the end of the year. They also hired John Wallace from the Timberwolves as, this is a new one to me, Executive Vice President of Player Personnel. These titles get more and more silly all the time. But that's Ben Tenzer is going to run the front office. John Wallace is going to come in and run it with him. And now the Nuggets are set 2 days ahead of the draft. We're having a little bit of fun with it, but like these things are important because you don't want somebody, hey, we're interested in making a trade with Denver and then wondering, where do we go? Who do we call? Like, who's it? We even get on the phone, or I'm on the phone with Ben Tenzer. And it's like, do we even have authorization to do this? Like, now it's like, okay, you're the guy. Good. Let's go. Let's make it happen.
And that's more what I want to talk about here was like the timing of this, getting this done and locked in and set a couple of days before the draft. We're expecting a lot of trade activity. We've already seen two very big trades with the Desmond Bane trade and the Kevin Durant trade. And I think it's important for the timing for the Denver Nuggets. This is a team that doesn't have a whole lot of flexibility, but the decisions they make, they're going to have to get them right. They're going to be very important. And there may be some trade opportunities with some of their players, and they're going to have to decide, is this the time to break up the Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon core and try to build out some depth, which I thought was a weakness for this team. So getting those positions solidified, particularly the GM role, solidified and known, I think is an important decision. Even if it is a bit of a formality for Denver, it's important to just get it done. Now everybody knows, you move forward, and let's see what they can do in the next few weeks here as we're into the meat of the offseason.
And you've got a couple big extension decisions this
Yeah.
summer on Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. So you got to figure those out. That's where it helps that Tenzer's already been there. You assume he has a really solid position on what he thinks those guys are worth and should he even extend them at all. Where is that at? So that's big. Excuse me, I have the hiccups real quick here. But it's
So excited over the
yeah,
Denver
I am
Nuggets
getting
front
excited.
office.
Yeah. But I wrote about it at Spot Track when I wrote their offseason preview. I did not expect this to be any kind of blockbuster offseason for the Nuggets. Dario Saric, we're going to talk about more options here in a moment, but he picked up his player option over the weekend, completely expected. Denver's in position to use the taxpayer MLE, about 5.7 million again. For the love of God, do not put a second year player option on it this time. Like, it's backfired on you with Reggie Jackson and Dario Saric. Maybe that played a part in why Calvin Booth's not the GM anymore. But yeah, I mean, Denver is, they've got decisions to make, but now you've got your guy making them, and that's the important thing here, because you don't want to be going into the offseason starting in a week, full off seasons. Really, it started now, but like
Yeah.
free agency opening in a week, and you still don't have your guy in charge of your front office. And let's not forget David Adelman hired as well as the
coach.
as the coach after being the interim head coach. So Denver, at least familiarity at the top of the organization, because the guys who ran the team down the stretch and throughout the playoffs all coming back.
All right, let's get into some of those option decisions that you were just referencing. I mean, I guess I believe the biggest one financially. Well, okay, let's start with Fred VanVleet, who really is the biggest one, and then we'll get into Chris Middleton. But Fred VanVleet, it's counter reporting here a little bit, but
Yeah,
the initial reporting from Kelly Iko of The Athletic said that the Rockets are likely to decline the option on Fred VanVleet's contract and instead work on a new long-term deal. Not they're going to decline it and lose Fred VanVleet. That is not their plan. Instead, the Rockets are going to work out a new deal with him. And then Mark Stein followed up by saying, well, wait. Maybe a source tells me that the Rockets might still pick up that option. But the bottom line, Keith, the most important thing is that whatever path they choose to get there, Fred VanVleet, very unlikely to be leaving the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, and we kind of always knew this. I remember
Yes.
when this was signed a couple years ago. You and I were in Las Vegas, I believe, when this went down, or at least when all the full details came out about it. And we were talking through it, and it was like, all right, yeah, pretty big overpay. But at the time, the Rockets were, seems crazy now that they have Kevin Durant in the fold and they were the number 2 seed in the West, but they weren't a free agent destination a couple years ago. They were really bad and really young. And they're like, hey, we're going to overpay Fred VanVleet. We're going to overpay Dylan Brooks because we need guys like that on this roster to just help us mature, help us play serious basketball. They were like a go-to league pass team for both of us, because we like the fact that, like, you might see an awesome alley-oop. You might also see them bean the old lady in the 8th row of the head with the ball.
That's right.
Who's not looking. Because
they turned it over like crazy.
Oh, my God. Just threw the ball all over the gym defensively. Literally, players are just run into each other and fall down and leave guys wide open. Like, they were a mess. So VanVleet, Brooks, they helped this team grow up. A year ago, took major steps forward. This year, obviously, huge steps forward. And then you get Durant. So VanVleet, my thought has always been, either if they pick this up at nearly 45 million, this option, it will be because they have every intention of maybe using him in a trade later. If they let the option go, then the plan is to re-sign Fred VanVleet at 25 million a year, something that's a lot more commensurate with what his actual value and role is for the team. But yeah, they are not going to let him go in a position here where he's that important to the Rockets.
Right. Okay. And then the other one that we had was again, not a surprise at all, but Chris Middleton picking up his option officially, $34 million player option. It was well known that he was going to pick that up. You wouldn't get that.
And I think that's actually a touch lower now.
I think it's 33 and change.
Yeah, because he's got some bonuses in there, but we'll sort through and get that number solidified by the time it really matters. But Wizards aren't going to have cap space. This one is a little interesting because I thought maybe there was a chance he would opt out, re-sign with Washington, only because Washington could then put him on a much more tradable contract moving forward. But as it is, they re-sign him, and
What would
here
that
we go.
number have to be realistically to make Chris Middleton?
25,
You think
probably.
teams would be after him at 25 million?
I think so. If he had, like, if let's say he played the first 3 months of next season pretty healthy and looked pretty solid, sure, then why not, right? If it's 25 million for a veteran wing who can do a lot of different stuff, yeah, maybe if that's what you really needed.
That's just it. It would require him to be healthy because he played
Yeah,
what, less than half the season this past year and was injured.
yeah.
I mean, he's still a
25
solid
million's like
veteran player.
18% of the cap ish in that range. So, like,
Yeah.
it's not that big of a number. And it sounds just, these are all monopoly money now. It's not even feel real.
25. What's 25
Yeah,
million?
what's that?
No big deal.
Sure. Yeah. So, but Middleton back, I mean, this was always the more likely path, was that he was going to just opt in. Because there was always the risk if he opted out, the Wizards are like, thank you. Good luck in your future endeavors. Enjoy the non-taxpayer MLE somewhere else.
Yeah.
So now he's back, and off we go.
All right, so Chris Middleton opts in. Another one, Javon Carter with the Chicago Bulls, which is sure fortunate for Chicago because they need guards. The Chicago Bulls, man.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what they were gonna do if Javon Carter didn't pick up that option.
Yeah,
I'm kidding, obviously.
They need guards like I need another cookie.
They have so many guards. But Javon
That's
Carter
going to resolve itself this summer,
yes,
for sure. You're going to see probably not. I mean, maybe Carter gets thrown into a trade at almost $7 million. Fine. A team could look at it and say, we could plug him in as our backup point guard for that amount. So, man, I got both dogs today.
they want to hear about these options.
So,
he wasn't a huge part of the rotation in Chicago. And so he was unlikely to find that kind of money out there on the market. So it makes sense that he picked up that option. I've liked Javon Carter for a while, just as a defense first guard. And I think it would make sense if he does get thrown into a trade somewhere. But honestly, I think they need to trade multiple guards on this Bulls roster to make things work.
Yeah. Kobe White's the best of that bunch by a pretty good margin now. So I think you'd have to get something really good. His situation is so tough because he's extension eligible, but his contract's so small, it's not really extendable. Like he's easily going to make 25 to 30 million per season on his next deal. And that might even be on the low end. So you're not really going to be able to extend him. So that becomes, all right, where do we go? And that's one where if you're the Bulls, I mean, they're the Bulls. So they'll probably be somewhere in the range of 6 to like 11 in the East come trade deadline time. So that's where you have to make a real decision. Like, are we just going to risk losing this guy for nothing? Because he's someone who will actually make it to free agency. And there's going to be teams with cap space next summer. So you may have a position where, hey, now we lost him, right? We lost him to a cap space team. So we'll see. Also, really kind of only sort of, he's not even on the screen there because he's a restricted free agent. Josh Giddey's another like on-ball guard, ball handler in the mix here. I think we tagged him as a shooting guard because that's primarily what he played for Chicago. But and of course Horton Tucker is one of your.
He could be a primary initiator. Is really what.
Exactly. Yes.
What we're getting at with him.
So I mean, you got to sort through this. This is a real mess. You got to move some guys, and they're getting a lot of interest in Lonzo too. There are teams that are like, hey, why not for $10 million? Like, we'll take a shot on Lonzo and
team option on the second year. Yeah, low risk.
Almost no risk at that point, right? Like that, and that's where if you're sitting on the mid level, you're like, I don't really want any of these guys, and we really need a guard to throw in our guard rotation. Grab Lonzo and move forward with that. And it shouldn't cost you all that much to get him either. I would assume another player potentially available. So.
All right. Any options that I missed?
Yeah, there were a couple others over the weekend. So we got Dario Saric.
Wow, that's right.
Pat Connaughton officially picked up his option at 9.
I just counted those in my head like they had already done it because they were just so well known. It makes so much sense.
Exactly. Yes. But yeah, and then there's a couple. Dwight Powell was the other one
with the
$4 million. Picked up his option over the weekend, which we kind of knew. There's a couple others tomorrow that have decision dates. Kyrie Irving and Matisse Thybulle. Irving's is at least semi-interesting because there's a thought of, does he opt in then extend off of that number, or does he opt out and give the Mavs a little bit of a discount, which could free up some flexibility for them under the aprons and the like to to maybe do something else, right? I think Dallas it's just a very incomplete roster right now. I don't think they have enough guards, so they're going to have to do something to rebalance a little bit. Maybe they should call Phoenix, but we'll see.
Or the Bulls.
Yeah, or the Bulls, yeah, because they point guard certainly what they need. And then Matisse Thybulle very much expected to opt in, but then becomes a really tradable number at like 11.5 million. Yeah. So, and Matisse Thybulle didn't play most of last year, but when he finally did get back at the end of the season, was every bit that he's been as a defender. And since he's arrived in Portland, he's actually shot it pretty well over really once a half season or so, and then whatever we're calling this cameo he made last year. So we'll see, what that looks like, but expect him to pick that up. Draft Wednesday. We'll be live. Plan is for the first round of the draft, watching it with you guys there. We'll just note for anybody, because of the way this goes, we will be going off over the reports that come out on Twitter if they come out ahead of time. We just kind of have to, otherwise we get too far behind.
Yeah, we'll be spoiling things basically
we'll
on that, which
but
that's the way it is.
That's the nature of the draft now. So if you really want to be surprised by every pick and you want to just follow along with just TV, no worries. Just I don't want you to jump in with us and be like, hey, come on, like you guys are a pick ahead. Well, it's because we're going to go off the reports, but we'll be breaking it down. I have thrown myself super deep into this draft class. I just put up on the basketball bulletin over the weekend my top 100, my personal big board. It's not a mock draft, it's just my personal rankings. And then today I published my guys list. So it's the players I really love in this draft class. And there's some towards the more top of the draft, and there's a handful down near the bottom. So I'm really excited to put that stuff out there and excited to get in all the draft stuff with everybody here on Wednesday. We're gonna have a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast on draft night. We're expecting to see some trade activity too, and all kinds of things going on. So should be a good time. So hopefully we'll see you guys here Wednesday night. We'll be live for the draft. But again, appreciate all of you. Make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. Obviously, we'll keep everybody up to date on what's going on around the NBA. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.